up, party people? This is Nina Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Now, you know, I go around this amazing planet of ours, finding the best humans on it to come on here, grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. So, I love that intro song. It's 94 The Genius made that song for me. And every time I play it, I don't even want to stop from playing, but I got guests, so I got to stop. Anyway, this is Alundas Havens. I'm so glad he is here. He's a passionate leader and servant who loves to align people and their ideal audience and shows that mirror their message. That's super important for all of you who are listening. And I know there's about 20 to 30,000 of y'all that listen to me every month. I'm just telling you that that is so important when you are out there starting your own thing to align your business and your message so that people know that you're congruent to what you're saying. So this guy, Alundas, he served in the United States Marine Corps. Thank you so much for your service, sir. He's the host and founder of the Winner's Paradigm podcast. He just told me he had another podcast too, so we're going to talk about that. He's the CEO and founder of the Alpha Influence Media, and he knows exactly how we can maximize our influence in order to be the best we can be in our business and family. And like you guys know, because a lot of people here, Lundis, are a lot of like leaders, entrepreneurs, you know, coaches, like things like that. That's who listen to my show. So I think you're speaking to the right audience. So thank you for being here. So Alundis, thank you so much for being here. I was saying that our audience is really a lot of like coaches and CEOs and thought leaders and things like that. And you know, people who are entrepreneurs, podcasters. I have a really great audience. So you're speaking to the right peeps, is what I'm saying. So tell us a little bit about you, Alundis, and we're gonna get into it. So who is Alundis Havens? Who are you?
Nina, thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show. A little bit about me. I'm from Fresno, California originally. So center of California, not really much going on there. Parents had me in 1921. So in the midst of their party years and really grew up seeing that. So
Mm-hmm,
having the
mm-hmm.
parties at the house, my dad had new girlfriends every single week. So when I was younger, I didn't attach on to people. For instance, when I was 4 years old, my uncle was like, "Hey, you want to go meet your dad's new friend?" And I was like, "Why? He's gonna have a new girlfriend next week." So
Right.
it
That's at
was
4. Wow.
exactly. So 5 years old, they kind of treated me like an adult, and that kind of sums it up. Was
Yeah.
they needed me sometimes to bounce ideas and going through that. So both parents were drinkers. My dad's heavy alcoholic. My mom drank every single day, and then narcissistic. Both parents, and they had a racist stepdad in the mix. So it was
Wow.
definitely one where one house. My dad's a hustler, so he was teaching me how to be a hustler, and he's the player, getting all the girls, and I'm the socially awkward one. So it was very difficult for me. And then the other
Right.
house, and then my dad's house, I can kind of act crazy, whatever, as long as I took care of the house and did the things he wanted. And then he's also abusive, so didn't get into those things or got away when he was drinking. And then on the other side of my mom's, a good thing is we always had food in the house, but they
Mm,
just didn't we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. I would get a design in my hair, for instance. You're a fucking hoodlum, and they would be upset at me. And so what? So got all the way up until high school where really started challenging those beliefs. My stepdad said, and he was far right, really conservative, and I hate liberals, and I hate this, and I hate these people. And I'm like, man, it's not that I hate all these people, is what I would tell him. And I'm like, why do you feel this way? I'm just saying, like, why do we have such a problem with everybody when you just want to be left alone? Like, why can't we just be
yeah.
accepting, learning about others, and just shut up about it? So it
Mhm.
was up until the point where one day I ended up getting kicked out of the house because he said he hated a group of people. And he's like, "Who do you hate?" I said, "Everybody. It's called equality. I can dish it out to anybody. I really see
Yeah.
everybody the same." And
Yeah.
made the joke that just didn't go well. So he tried to punch me in the face that day, and I was
Wow.
laughing at him, and I was just like, "Man, like I call you dad. Like you've been here since I was like 7." Um, I really looked up to him, even though we didn't see eye to eye, and I knew
Right.
even with him and my dad, there were certain things I could talk about. So kind of got myself into a situation. Like I said, we always had food at home, but when I was at my dad's house, I was selling my clothes to be able to get whatever I needed because I lived in
Mm-mm.
Fresno. He moved to Oakland. He worked in San Francisco. So he was never home. And when I asked him for things, hey, you can figure it out. You get $40 a month for uh,
Your
yeah,
allowance?
my allowance. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
and I'm like, Dad, we don't have food in the house. He's like, yeah, we do. His wife was there, but we didn't have a relationship because um, kind of, she had another kid, she had other kid, her and my dad had a kid, and then she had her own son. So she put them first, and I was kind of
Yeah, you
just
were the step kid.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
was a step
Mhm.
kid that they didn't give any love. When I went back to my mom's, that's where I was just like, we have food in the house, but we don't have any money. So that's where that hustler came in. My friends were doing the dumb stuff, and I'm the middleman. And hey, man, let me go to the store get you some chips. So ran into
Right.
problems to where one of my cousins is strung out on meth. He starts gang banging. He's sending my friends after me to come jump me. And they're like, hey,
Wow.
man, who you picking? And I'm like, hey, that I know it's family, but you deal with it. You handle business with him. I'm not in this. I'm about making money. And I was thinking at this time, like, hey, how do I get out? So ended up going
Right.
to the Marine Corps, boot leave. I knew that my parents split up, but they lied to me, my stepdad and my mom. They tried to say that they were still back together. But one thing that I'm really good at and really bad at the same time is I know how to analyze situations, because from a young
Right.
age, I knew that, hey, going in this room, people are going to fight. My parents are upset, they're drinking. So I kind of knew how to maneuver around things. So we have a party. My stepdad thinks my mom's having an affair. To sum that up real quick, my wrestling coach was there. He kind of was the father figure for me in high school, because
Mm,
I was always searching for that. I didn't have that dad that allowed me to be me and really to
right.
voice my concern. You had one house where I had to be the badass and this or that,
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
I had the other house where I had to be the responsible, quote unquote, in that. But I got the good grades. I did everything right. I pleased them, but I really wasn't being myself. So um, we have this party. The wrestling coach comes up to me. Hey, I'm going to the bathroom. Only one that's open is my mom's room. So I'm like, hey, man, that's cool. And I'm like, hey, my mom's in the bathroom. Please let her get out. Don't go in the room. Corner of my eye, see my stepdad follow him to the bathroom. I hear a 45 cock back. My stepdad shot him within a centimeter from his face.
Oh,
So
shoot.
that happened. We all get out of the house. I'm on the phone with the operator. They try to arrest me because we had a lot of liquor in the house. Because again, my parents are drinkers. Luckily, I didn't
Right.
drink that day, and I was only 18. So I was on the phone with the operator. My stepdad has a 45 on his hip to me at the door,
Wow.
yelling at me. I pick up my wrestling coach, throw him in a car to get him away because the cops are coming. And then the helicopter over the house, SWAT team goes in, wakes up my brother and sister. And after that, that really triggered me to get angry again. I wanted to
Yeah.
do some stupid things. I wanted retaliation on my stepdad. And
Yeah.
that was why me and my dad started talking again. Was I was like, hey, man, I may need you, So it was really not processing this. And then the good thing is, like we talked about, being mature, got in the Marine Corps, and they see me as a leader. They're like, man, you're a leader. You're not going to be the one BSing around or
Mhm,
anything
mhm.
like that. So I was 19, 20 years old, became my own boss in the Marine Corps, and let that go to my head. Had really the ego chip on my shoulder, and I
Mhm.
thought I was achieving everything, but really drinking heavily. I was drinking about a gallon of whiskey at one point in time,
Ooh.
and then just repeating some of the history that my parents did. Hookups and breaking up with my wife before we got back together, and then we had a miscarriage. And I was like, you know what, I can do this dad husband thing. This is easy, so
Mhm,
fully committed
mhm.
back into my wife after we got back together. And I was just like, I need help. There's so much things that I've kind of suppressed those emotions. And that's where that journey started a little bit. Along the way, I had some friends. My grandfather died, who kind of was the one who always cleaned everything up. So he dies. I'm working at a mortgage brokerage. I failed my mortgage exam 3 times. I'm on a 6-month probation period waiting. And it kind of just hit me there, where I was like, man, I don't feel like this is me. So I went on
Mhm,
to help
mhm.
veterans at a company. And then in August of this year, they came at me sideways. So I was the number one sales rep. And what happened was my nanny moved to Minnesota. So I'm holding the baby, making sales calls, and I'm just hustling all day long. I'm trying to make this thing happen. And hey, here's your
Right.
corrective action plan. I'm working 60 to 80 hours. So I see no problem. The job comes at me and they're like, hey, um, is this really what you want to do? Is this your heart? Is your heart still here? So I went back to this podcasting group I had with my mentor, Zach Babcock, and now business partner. And he was like, hey, I'd love to start a business with you. I see a lot of potential in you. I really love, you as a person, your story in that. A week before my daughter was born, I started the Winner's Paradigm podcast, where I started talking about recalibrating mindset and really talking about all these things. So I get down and dirty, and I talk about those things that are uncomfortable about how I grew up or how I process certain things or how my parents made things be at a young age. So
Mhm.
uh, for certain things I just don't understand, or I didn't get social cues. So it kind of was having that podcast that broke it off to me. And then we started a
Right.
company called Alpha Influence Media. So that's the second podcast. And that's all about building dominant brands, maximizing
Okay.
influence, and kind of helping people do the same thing we are, where you can be able to get your message through. And for me, like, it was life changing, because now I'm being able to attract the people I want. I got a breathwork coach and unpacking these things. And it
That's
was awesome,
good.
finally being able to know that, hey, everything's going to be okay. There's nothing wrong with me. Again, I grew up my whole entire life with narcissists. So it's definitely difficult, because you think about yourself and you're like, I'm not worthy. I'm not good. I'm not this or
Yeah.
that. And it's not even that, it's just them projecting on you for whatever it may
Right.
be, even if it's not real.
No, and narcissism, I think a lot of people throw that term around right now, like it's just a thing to say, kind of like racism. Everybody's racist. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a thing to say, but narcissism is a real thing, and I understand what you're saying. That's a very difficult thing, because they think of themselves before they'll think of you, even when you're their child, right? Because they can't help it. Everything is about them, right? It's their world. So that must have been a very difficult way to live. I also have to say that out of all of our really hard times in life, right, come our biggest strengths, right? Because of the hardest times in your life, and that was a lot going on in a kid's life, right? Because yeah, I mean, to you it might have been like, oh yeah, this is just my life, and you coped with it. But the truth is when we start to get older, like you said, I now have a coach, a breath coach work, and I do the podcast and stuff like that. You have to deal with those things, because if you don't deal with those things, they start to creep into your life, kind of like they were doing with you, right? Breaking up with your girl, not knowing if you can be married or have a kid and all that stuff. So tell me about that moment. What was it in your life at that moment where you said, okay, something's got to freaking give here, right? I got to change this pattern, because come on, Alundis, the truth is you have a choice, and the choice could be that you want to still go drink and do, be with women and all this other stuff and not be responsible. And let's face it, many people choose that. It's easier, right? So why did you choose the more hard path? And what I mean by hard path is that your brain wasn't wired for that, right? You were wired to follow what your parents were doing. So what was that moment for you?
I absolutely love that, that you asked this question, and it makes me emotional. Why? Because my dad used to tell me, "Hey, you're cut from a different cloth. You're not like us." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm
Right.
like, I've just realized and seen all this shit as a little kid where I'm like, I don't want to repeat this. And I would say the embarrassing things. My dad's almost 50, and
Mhm.
I have a daughter. He has a daughter right after me, and he's just
Mhm.
partying. And he was in Vegas, for instance. He had like girls with him, licking him on his face, put everything on Snapchat. Take in mind he was married at the time. So his wife used to call me and she'd be like, "Your dad did this or that." What's funny is he used to abuse her, and I'd be the one jumping in and almost fist
Right.
fighting him. Like I fist fought my dad in high
Mhm.
school. So it was one of those where I told her I was drunk one day when she called me, and I was like, "Hey, you better fucking leave him. Like, he's gonna keep doing this." And I was just like,
Right.
what's funny to me is her family, my stepmom's family is all gangsters. So they never jumped my dad. And I used to always, every time we'd be around her family for the most part, I would get into it with my dad. And I would just be like, I don't know how you guys just let this slide. Apparently, she was the one who said, "Hey, I don't want nobody to touch him," but that was that. So it was really me looking at these things and then definitely like going through being married. I got
Mhm.
married pretty damn quick, and it was something funny where it was like me and my wife knew each other since fifth grade, so we were always good friends. We were
Mhm.
like, we can
Mhm.
do this, but it was really learning about yourself, and so much things come out. And then
Mhm.
two, it was like the embarrassing factor of like under explaining about how my parents are and why they act that way. And she was just like, "You just want a relationship," and I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not how it happens." So good thing is my stepmom, my wife are cool. And my stepmom was like, she's like, "Yeah, anytime in his life, he gets close with his dad will do one thing. Or for instance, I turned 21 and my dad went on a rant one day that I had an easy life. I never went through any adversity. And starts going on this. So I'm like, bro, what are you talking
Right.
about? And
Right.
yeah, and
Yes,
then
I do.
he at the time he was like 45, and he's talking about what happened to him when he was a kid, and he was doing it in a different form to me. So he was talking about how his cousins would keep him home. You have to fight the neighbors, and if you win you can
Oh
leave.
my god.
For me it was, hey, you better whip your cousins asses. You don't whip their ass, I'm gonna whip your ass. Regardless,
Right.
of my ass whooped for laying my hands on other people, but it was so he can look good. So it was
Right.
one of those things for me where I finally like had to come to grasp with that when I stopped drinking, where it was like, why am I like this? Why do I like just getting blacked out and that? Because I don't want responsibility. I don't
You
want to
want
think
yeah.
about my feelings. I
Yeah.
don't want to process these things. And it was something, where the marriage, everything was just compiling. And it was that make or break point. I had four good friends die at the time. My grandfather
Mm.
died. And I started thinking about legacy. And I was just like, what am I going to do? Like one of my boys died of cancer. And the last day I was so blacked out. I was talking about killing myself. And it was something where it was like before I deployed, and my mom, here's
Mhm.
the narcissist. Why do you feel that way? You have no reason to feel like you should kill yourself. You've had a good life. Da, 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 da. We gave you everything. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So it was really diving into that for me, where you got to
Mhm.
journal, you have to cry things out and really realize for yourself that, hey, it's okay not to be okay.
Right. Now, but where did you get that from? Like, was that innate in you, or do you think you started to maybe hear a couple things like on social media and stuff, or did you get into self-development? I'm just curious as to, where that voice and that want to, where did that come from?
So I always kind of felt like that growing up was kind of
Mhm.
explaining it. It's just embarrassing. For instance, right now, I know we are talking about before we jumped on this. My sister was kind of telling me that she's going through similar things that I did. And
Mhm.
for instance, my mom has like secret spies, and it's funny. But my sister, her and her friend went to my sister's dad's house and had lunch. One of my mom's friends told my mom, and my mom got mad at my sister. Now my sister's grounded for 2 weeks, and she's not allowed to hang out with that friend outside of school because they did something that my mom didn't approve of, and it was
Right.
kind of like that for me. So it was always explaining to people that, people didn't understand me. They didn't understand the situation because my parents paint the picture pretty damn well. And they're
Right.
like, oh yeah, he's a good kid. Da, 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 da. He likes to talk a lot of shit, and I'm like, that's not how it is. I can show you text messages. She's never
Mhm.
once invited herself to my house after I bought
Mhm.
one. They don't care. It's the lack of care. It's me always going out. So
Right.
first it was, realizing those things, and I've always been highly driven. So it was just like I accomplish everything, chip on my shoulder, proving everybody wrong. They can f themselves is what I used to say, and it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
really proving everybody wrong. And then the self development, and that's
Yeah.
where definitely my business partner Zach Babcock helped me out tremendously, and a couple other people, where I was
Mhm.
listening to all these different things, and it was like you have to make the change for yourself. And first, it was
Mhm.
acknowledging the problem, kind of how
Mhm.
it was, and then it was listening to the podcast. It was having the conversations with other people where I'm like, you know what, that's it. I didn't like getting into the conversations and being like, you know what, I like having a breathwork coach or someone who understands. My boy Nick Wingo is my coach, and he was a firefighter for 20 years and went through PTSD, had bad relationships. So I can talk about these things versus if I go to therapy and they're like, how do you feel? And I'm like, I feel like I really want to do something stupid. They're going to report me. Or in the
Right.
Marine Corps, they
Right.
put me on antidepressants because they're a neuro
Right.
blocker because I tore all the cartilage in my right knee year two. So
Right.
that's why I had to get out the Marine Corps after 4 years. And it was something where I was like, I hated therapy. I did 14 years of my life, but I just felt like it wasn't helping me because they were telling
Right.
me, hey, you can get this breathing app and you can just 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Do you understand how it is with
Right.
narcissists to where it's like you work so hard? Like you tell yourself, I'm not going to do this. And then they're like, you don't know what the hell's wrong with it. You're the problem.
Right.
And you're just like,
Right.
all I said was, hey, this is what we need to do. This is how we come to a conclusion. And all of a sudden, it's my fault again. I'm the problem. My mom was running her mouth on my wife, and my wife said one thing about my mom, and I respected that. I was like, I would too. She keeps running her mouth on
Right.
me. And I
Right.
just told my mom, like, hey, let's be civil. I don't care how you feel about my wife. And I was just like, because at the end of the day, that is my wife. And she's tried to have a relationship, try to be cordial. But my mom does the little, mannerisms, rolls
Mhm.
her eyes, doesn't pay
Mhm.
attention. My dad's the same way. They act like it's a girl, and you're talking to them and you're like, I just want to take them home. I'm not listening to what they say. I'm just saying the right things. And it was kind of that
Right.
with my mom to where it was like, man, it's really frustrating from the outside looking in to where it's like you put all this work in, you try, and then you just get shitted on in the end. And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, your opinion doesn't matter. You don't know what you're talking about. And you're like, am I really that? So it goes back to the self doubt again. And in my case, it was
Yeah.
putting all this work in and I'm getting frustrated and exploding. And it's like, that's why I'm so reactive was it kept me safe for so long. But the problem is now where I start doing the work and I'm like, you're in your situation for a reason. Like six and
Mhm.
a half years later, I have my own
Mhm.
house. I'm out
Mhm.
the Marine Corps. I graduated college. I started a business. I have two
Right.
podcasts. I have a
Right.
daughter and another baby on the way. My mom's still living with my grandma. So it's
Right.
one of those where it's like, that's the perspective. I'm not saying anything bad about her. I'm just
No,
saying,
I
hey,
get it.
in,
Yeah.
in her point of
Yeah.
view, she may think she's not doing anything wrong, but she hasn't shown those results. She hasn't put the time in. She called me one day and she was talking about life's so hard. And I'm like, man, I wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning, hit the gym. My body feels like shit because I tore all the cartilage in my knee, dislocated both shoulders 4 times, really bad joint problems, shoulders, knees, elbows,
Right.
hips. So I don't feel well every day. So I use cannabis to be able to help in that CBD, and it's helped
Right.
me out tremendously. And then I do that. I was going to school. I was running the podcast after taking care of the daughter, and it was like you make time for the things that are important to you. So for
Yeah.
me, it was very difficult because my mom's like, you don't understand, and goes back to the oh well, you have two different you have two different ways of income, and that's why you're here and there. And I'm like, that's not how it is. Like I was in the Marine Corps
Mhm.
sending
Mhm.
thousands a month to my mom to help her out, thinking that that's what
Right.
I needed to do ultimately to get to a point where I was just like, you can only help somebody so much before they can help themselves.
Yeah, and you know what I love about that? Not love about that, like, oh, that's great. But what I mean, what I love about what you're saying is that it goes back to also taking ownership and responsibility for yourself. Like, you have got to stop being a victim. You have got to stop being a victim, right? Because she could say all day, oh, it's because you have two jobs. Then why don't you get two? Oh, you have, multiple streams of income. Then why don't you have multiple streams of income? Because there's nothing different that you're doing, Alundis, that nobody else can do. The difference is that you have to take ownership and realize you're only a victim to your own mentality, right? And
And
so,
that's I'm
mhm.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
That was one of the things when we had that conversation. It was that the one thing I let her sit with, and I'm not going to dive too much into it, but I was like, hey, what time do you get off work? 4 p.m. So from 4 p.m., what time do you go to sleep? 10 o'clock. 4 p.m. to 10 o'clock, what are you doing? Oh, I'm tired. My body hurts. You can work a remote job online. And it was
Mhm.
like, I can't do that. It's too hard. There's your
Mhm.
answer.
There's your
So it
answer.
was
Yeah.
showing somebody that. In my case, I was like, man, I get off work and doing that. At the time, I was staying up to 11 to 1 in the morning to finish
Yeah.
my schoolwork. So I was just like, this doesn't make sense from the outside looking in, because you can be able to make all these things happen for yourself if you put the
Yeah.
time in.
And you also have to thank them in a way too, right? Because they made things challenging for you. You also have to thank the fact that they made things challenging for you. It made you who you are today, right? It made you who you are today. Now, you could have definitely taken the bad parts, which you already admitted to you to us and to yourself that you had already started that with the drinking and all of that. You had already started in the wrong path, but you said to yourself, I need to change this, and you did, right? And the hustler came out, that hustle that came out of you that you learned. You learned to maneuver, you learned to be strategic, you learned to bob and weave. You know what I'm saying? So that taught you a lot too. So every time I look at my tragedy story, the things that I've been through in my life, I had a kid at 15 years old. So I get it when you have a kid young, but I took care of him and I did what I had to do. That was the hardest time of my life. Also made me the hardworking woman that I am today, right? So you take what you can, you, like I always say, you chew the meat and you spit out the bones, right? So you take what's going to be nutrient to you, what's going to enrich you, what's going to give you what you need, Alundis, and you take that and then you enhance it and make it better for your kid, right? So how do you prevent yourself, or how do you like make sure that are the best father you are when you wake up every day, the best husband, right? The best co-worker or co-founder? Like, how do you do that every day? What's your thing?
You know what's funny is I actually did a post today on that, and I was talking about simulated experience, just
Mm,
for kids. They don't have to go through the same exact things as us. For me, it was realizing that some of the ways I think, for instance, my father-in-law called me and he was just like, hey, your brother-in-law did this dumb thing. How do you feel? I'm like, kick him out your house. And he's
right.
like, wait a minute, is that something that happened to you that you're projecting on somebody else? And that's why you feel that way? And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And then I thought about it. I'm like, that's right. My wife reminds me
Yeah.
all the time is like, not everybody's the same. And I think that's
Right.
really what it comes down to is like, you got to be able to do the work. That's one of the things I
Mhm,
made. And I
mhm,
made that
mhm.
priority to myself that I'm going to be open with my kids. Why? Because I can even get designs in my hair. It's not that I was a bad kid. I got 3.8s. I played sports all the times. I was that. I always messed up because when I would go to other people's houses, their parents would be like, "Oh, how is it at home?" And then here goes me just oversharing too much in telling them these things that I probably shouldn't have been saying. And then they report back to my parents. My parents are like,
Right.
what the hell is wrong with you? Going back on it again. I'm the problem. So
Right, right,
I always
right.
had this connectivity issue with people and trying to be able to learn. And when it came down to it, I started being a dad. Um, One of the things I was thinking about was like, I didn't want a son. And I was like, I don't want a son first. Good thing is I had a daughter and I was like, she's going to mellow me out. But had the daughter. And then I realized like none of that stuff matters. None
Right.
of the stuff of being on machismo and thinking that we're
Yeah.
so hard or, oh, they got to be this way. Like I got a son on the way now. And I'm so excited
Oh,
because
cool.
I had to put some work into it. um 2 miscarriages later, and it gave me
Yeah.
perspective to be like, man, we just
Mhm.
got to be the best we can be. Like at the end of the day, like I have one daughter, so if I treat my daughter like shit and I let her know like
Yeah.
this is how a man's going to treat you, this is
Yeah.
what's going to happen. In my case, she may run into a guy one day that is over here, going for multiple different girls and cheating on her and acting
Mhm,
stupid,
mhm.
and it's going to be me the one giving advice. And if I show her those things, in my case, like I have my dad doing that in front of his daughter,
Right.
it was something for me where like I told him that I was like, hey man, what are you doing? And he's like, you don't know what the hell she's doing, or you don't know what the hell my daughter sees, and da 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 da. And I'm like, that's what he
Yeah.
told me when I was a little kid when I would question him about things, or when he would be telling me stupid shit about him partying, and oh, we had this girl, and then I'm just like, and yeah, that's cool, Dad. Like to just brush it off, So it was
Right.
really realizing that for me, like, hey, how do you want to be remembered? What does it be? And I definitely don't. I've went through that. I had racist parents, and I don't just say that. Like they said some shit that was crazy. My
Yeah.
stepdad, had a
Yeah.
black girlfriend for the first time in the Marine Corps. It was kind of funny. I grew up with Mexicans my whole life because my
Mhm.
grandmother had an affair, so I never met the black side. So never really fit in because I'm not dark enough to be black, and I don't grow up with them. And then I'm a No Sabo kid, so I don't speak Spanish. So uh,
Right.
didn't get respect from the Mexican side, So it
Right, that's
was
funny.
exactly. So it
I
was like
get it.
learning all these things. And then one time, like I dated this girl and she's like, hey, did you tell your mom about me? And I'm like, no. And she's like, why? I was like, because I know my mom's gonna say something. And she's like, why? Black girl, good family. But went to my mom and I'm like, hey mom, hey, here's a picture of my girlfriend. I would love for you to meet her sometime. My mom's like, oh, she better not be ghetto. First thing she said without asking anything about who she is
So
and that,
ignorant.
and I'm like, but if she'll be
Right.
Mexican, it would have been different, So
Right.
it was something for me where it was like, you have to be able to see things for who they are, what they are, and
Yeah.
you got to be the
Yeah.
best you can be. So in my case, it was all these projections that I'm coming out with, getting upset, screaming at my parents. But it was like, why? Because I see the things like things aren't right and they're not aligning with my core values. So
Mhm.
how am I going to be
Mhm.
any better? And that's where I said that post today where I'm talking about simulated experience. Like I know how it feels as a kid. I know how it is to get beat for dumb things,
Yeah,
you
me
know,
too.
to be
Yeah.
afraid of your parents or
Mhm.
to just not be yourself. So I'm never
Mhm.
going to let my kids go through that because that was something for me where it held me back and then even gave me
Mhm.
anxiety, PTSD, so much things to where even now, like we can't have a civil conversation and I can't say how I'm feeling because they're gonna be like, no, you're not,
Yeah.
you can't feel that
Yeah.
way. And it's
Yeah,
like,
and yeah, and you can't anymore look for validation in people that will never give it to you, right? So you have to give people grace as well, right? Because they could only give you what they have and they don't have it in them. It's not like they look at you and say, oh, I hate Alundas. It's not nothing to do with that. They just don't have the capacity to get there. And that's okay for them. That's okay. Right. So now what Alundas needs to do is take what we, in the Latino community call a generational curse, right? Take that generational curse of how our parents treated us and change that and shift it, right? I had a similar experience, although my father was not involved. I had a stepfather who was awful to me, but I decided that I was going to be the best mom I could be, right? And do we f up? Yes. And Alundis, you're going to f up. Just make sure that you give yourself a lot of grace too, because just because you mess up and your wife will mess up as well, that does not mean that we are not good parents. You know what I mean? So just remember that and give yourself grace because you don't want something to trigger you into thinking, I'm just not a good father. You're gonna mess up, dude. I'm telling you right now, she's still little. You're gonna mess up. Okay.
no, 100% agree. And that's
Yeah.
something I've learned through marriage as well is like,
Yeah.
I told myself I'm not going to be reactive. So one thing that I said I'm really good at and really bad at, I'm really good at reading situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
really bad at learning tonality because I think everybody's yelling at me all the
Right.
time. And it may not
Right.
even be that way, but you
Right.
raise your voice and I'm like, huh? You know what I
Who
mean?
you
Or
yelling at? What? Right.
exactly.
That's so funny. But tell me a little bit about what you're doing today because you know I love. Okay, so I think I'm getting something here. So your audience and your messaging and all of that, it to me sounds like you're just being authentic. You're just being Alundis, right? And I think that that's going to really help connect people to you and to them, right? Because just like me and you, I'm much older than you, right? And being much older than you, it's kind of wonderful if you think about it and interesting that we have a connection when it comes to dealing with narcissistic parents, dealing with having to hustle, dealing with hard times, even though our age gap is what it is, right? So what is it that you're trying to show other people when it comes to their branding? Because I know that's something that you want people to learn and grow and have a good, message out there. So tell me about that.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned age because that's something that always hit me. And I always had the older friends and I was always with the older
Hmm.
people because my parents wanted me to act that way. To even where in the Marine Corps, like my best friend, he's 35, he's 10 years older
Right.
than me. And it was something
Right.
where like that was my mentor. He became my best friend. Why? Because I
Right.
could be able to talk about these things and we click on
Hmm.
those things. So love how you mentioned that. Yeah. Two different time periods and uh I definitely love those things because you get to see perspective. I was raised like the older generation. So
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
funny to me, with certain new things and why I get upset. But I'd say like for me, my goal is just to be able to have people be themselves, and you're
Mhm.
going to influence people regardless of what you're doing, who you are, what you say. So I was influencing people when I was drinking, and I was the life of the party because I
Right.
would show up faded, and everybody'd be like, "That's Alundas," you
Mhm,
know what I mean? And
mhm.
then I get what I wanted, but it may not been what I actually wanted.
Want it.
Versus,
Right. That's
when I stopped
smart.
drinking and I'm talking about core values, and I'm like, "Hey, man, that resonates with me. I really love you
Mhm,
saying that," and
mhm.
people are like, what, this is a brand new dude, what are you talking about, and it
Right.
for me, I always felt like I was the introvert. I would always say extroverted introvert. You could put me in a room full of people, I'll talk. I get really bad anxiety, but I'll talk to everybody, but I won't click with people, and that's why that anxiety factor will go. But when me and you
Mm.
click on that level, we'll talk for hours,
Right.
so it was really learning that. It was getting in the room with the right people. In July, I went to my business partner's event in St. Louis, got up in front of 80 people, and I started telling my story and overshared, and started crying a little bit because I got emotional. And I was like, it was powerful because for the first time in my life, besides the podcast, don't get me wrong, it's different when it's on Facebook and you have
Yeah.
people congratulating you. Hey, man, this is powerful. But it's completely different in person where they're like, I want
Yeah.
to give you a hug. You've been through some real shit. We really love you for who you are, man, and it's a different feel in person. So got up in front of people, I shared my story, and that kind of leads into the business, it's where it was like,
Yeah.
I got to be able to help other people out, get on shows that resonate with them, streamline this process because we got so many things going on. Like
Mhm,
we talked
mhm.
about, you got to be able to manage it, delegate, figure out other
Mhm.
things for you. So
Mhm.
that was kind of my goal with the business was I want to help people create impact with whatever they're doing, whether they're talking about making money. And that's kind of why I built two different podcasts. Is I have the one for mindset. The other one talks about building dominant brands. And I talk about that. Like I went to school because I made a promise to myself in the Marine Corps that I would do it. Good thing is it got me into self-development. I realized it didn't resonate with me. But on that podcast, I teach all the things that I've learned about business hands-on. So I'm like, you know
Good.
what? I didn't know anything. I learned about ads because I went to a person for ads, or maybe I lost money here and this is what's helped me. Or,
Mhm.
this is how you can be able to build your podcast. This is what you can do in the meantime to make a little bit of money because I've been there struggling. So for me,
Right.
it was really taking your struggle and then showing everybody that that's a superpower.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I freaking love that. All right. So tell me about like so because you mentioned a few things of the business. So tell me about the business. I want people to understand exactly what it is that you're offering people or what you do with people. So break down your business for me. Go ahead and give it to me.
Absolutely. So my business is called Alpha Influence Media. What we are is a podcast media company. I say media because originally we were just booking. So we would get you
Okay.
booked on shows that resonate with your message, get you guests that resonate with you. Cause I know a lot of times with people, yes, you can use apps, you can do all these things, but you don't have time to be managing it. I know for a fact I don't.
Right.
I would go on an app and sometimes I don't reach back to people for 3 months, just
Right.
because I have things set up, I go on there, set up 20 podcast interviews and that. So it was taking that away from the six-figure entrepreneur and telling them, hey, we can do this for you. You focus on doing what you do. You show up game day, perform. Then it went into us doing Spotify ads, for instance. So we can do an ad for you, put you on Spotify. Someone clicks based off listen to you, whether it's a podcast, a genre playlist, which you can specify into your city, country, whatever. More specifics. They click on your ad, it goes to your podcast, your website, whatever. And then
Mhm.
we also take that video that we're putting out there and we break it up into short form content so you can share it on social media. Cause I feel like that's something that either you're doing it exceptionally well, or you're not doing it at all. And that was something
Right.
for me where it was like all these things that we're doing, helping people, get their message out there, tap into the being in the right rooms. Like that was all the things I was doing for myself. So it was kind of
Right.
awesome that we started this business with a great mission, but it was something that like I went through as well. So it
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
my customer avatar was talking to my previous self and then kind of my future self at the same time. Because
Yes.
as I'm going through it, I'm like, you know what? You're going to want to be here. This is how you want to
Mhm.
talk to people. Hey,
Mhm.
man, we can break it down this simple of what we're going to be able to do for you, how we're going to be able to help it for you. Podcasting is a big, long game where
It is.
just
It's a
because you
long
get on these
game.
good podcasts, you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to get all these downloads. It doesn't happen like that,
Right.
So
Right.
it's about being
Right.
consistent. And that's kind of with me was learning that you can be able to do so much for people if you just put that time in and help them, with some things that they may be struggling on. Cause again, I did the same thing.
Mhm, mhm. No, that's good. I'm glad you said that. I do have a lot of podcasters and stuff that listen to the show, and a lot of like, coaches and entrepreneurs who are looking into podcasting. So there's a couple great takeaways from there. One is it's a long game. Pod fade is a real thing. By like 7, 8 episodes, they're fading out within a year. I forgot how many millions of podcasts are out there that are not even active, right? So I love that. I love that you're also helping the podcaster or the entrepreneur kind of get on people's shows, because that you're right. I mean, I've been on Podmatch and Matchmaker FM and all that great stuff. And I have, I don't know, 50, 60 messages I still have to get through, right? Because my podcast has become very popular. And so everybody wants to be on it. And that's great. I'm excited about that, but I can't catch up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot. It's a lot. So that's great. So then what I got is you help people get onto shows, right? Do you help people get onto that to the person's show as well? Like, do you do it reverse as well? Like, you do. So you do both.
Yeah, so we do both bookings. We get you booked on shows that resonate with your message, and then we can
Okay.
get you guests as well. Whatever
Okay.
your mission is, and your core focus is, and that's really what it is. If
Okay.
it's somebody who's brand new to podcasting, we can build them up, get them on shows. But at the
Mhm.
same
Mhm.
time, it's one of those to figure out, hey, like what's going to be strategic. So I have a
Mhm.
guy that does sales courses. He just built a new door-to-door sales course. So we're like, all right, cool. What we're going to do is be relationship centric. We're going to go on other sales podcasts. We're going to be like, hey, we have a door-to-door program. It's a free PDF we can be able to give out. People can learn, hey, if this is it. So they go on that podcast and talk about door-to-door sales, and then they're strategic with everything that they're doing. So like we said, we have the 60 in the vault. I'm booked
That's
up till
good.
April of 2022 for
Mhm.
both my podcasts because I was that one that led everybody. I recorded them. I have 50 episodes in the vault. And it
Mhm.
was one where I was like
Mhm.
slowly putting out, and that was with putting two. Next year, it's going to be with putting two every single week because I'm going
Yeah.
to go on a podcast tour, 100 on my podcast, 100 on other people next year. So it was
Wow.
something for me where it was like, hey, taking that part where we can do both for people, but it's just really on that entrepreneur, and about their
Yeah.
time, their mission, what they're looking to do. Some people just want guests on their show so
Mhm.
they can be able to talk about health. Like for me, for my podcast, like, yeah, it's about mindset, but at the same time, mindset's so many different things. So I have
Yeah.
sections on my podcast where we talk about mindset and resilience. And then there's other
Mhm.
times where I talk about getting healthy. So I have
Mhm.
two different owners of CBD companies. They came on and one of them sponsors the podcast. So we talked about CBD and he's like, hey, this is what can help you. And I'm like, you know what? This stuff has helped me. And then I get, for instance, I got somebody who I didn't think that a plant-based bodybuilder was going to be able to help me because I'm like, I'm not plant-based. And then all of a sudden he's like, hey, man, you should do this. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I have all these conditions. Maybe if I eat a little bit cleaner, stay off the red meat, eat at select times, I'm going to feel
Mhm.
better. So it's been awesome as well for me. And that's why I say that part of the journey, even with the clients, where I'm like, I use my podcast as a learning tool for myself that's
Yeah.
helping other people. Cause I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I started diving into being more plant based. So it's like a 50-50 split, but I eat a lot more vegetables than I used to. And I'm really like taking care about my body. And I'm like, so it's all about you and your mission, your podcast, and what you're
Mhm.
looking to
Mhm.
do.
That's great. So, okay, that's fantastic. And you're right. I think, a lot of the things that I've learned have also been through conversations like this, right? Because you learn a lot about business and health and mindset and strategy and like so many amazing, because there's so many amazing humans out there, right? And so when you can connect with another good human, not only that, we become friends, we become like a network. And so if you ever have anything that hey, you know what, that person would be good on Nina's podcast. I'm like, Alundas can really help this person build their podcasting game. Like that's what it's about, right? That's what it's about. So you're also said something that you said, not only do you do that part, but you also take the video and you break them up into clips to give to people as well. So you're also doing video editing as well as the podcast, right? So wow, that's a lot going on there. How are you liking that part, the video editing and the clips?
So I'm not tech savvy at all. And this is where you delegate,
Right.
or outsource, So
Yeah.
I didn't do that initially. Even now, I'm going to do that in the future, but that's kind of was my new mission where I was like, man, this is something I need to do for myself, but to also help
Mhm.
out other people. So it was playing it. I will say it's extremely difficult because again, I said I take care of my daughter while I run the business
Yeah.
and two podcasts. So it goes in phases, and I'm not going to say that it's not that way. Like I have a course open, I'm learning, I'm helping my clients out, and then I'm holding my daughter's hand right next to me and laying
Right.
with her because she's one and she just wants me to be dad and be right next to her. So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
in phases, and I think that's what you have to do is figure out like, hey, what's in best interest for you. For me, like I was working that job where they didn't respect you, they didn't care. So even learning video editing, that's not my strong suit by trade. I'm a relation centric guy. I
Right.
can talk to people all day long. I can sell all day long.
Mhm.
But it was
Mhm.
something for me where it's like sometimes even in business, you got to be able to learn multiple different hats. You got to be able to do
Yeah.
that to get to that point in your business. So
Yeah.
where even if I do outsource it, I know exactly what to do. So it's pretty damn awesome, learning those things. But at the same time, like
Yeah.
I got to be a dad and just be me, and I
Yeah.
love that part of the journey.
Yeah, that's great because you are an entrepreneur too. I mean, this is what you're doing. You're out there hustling again, as you like when you were a kid, you hustling, but you're doing it the right way. And it's something that people can be proud of. Like your wife can be proud of that. Your kids can be proud of that. You know what I'm saying? So kudos to you, man, Alundis. You're doing a fantastic job. I know that like I said, I have a lot of people in my audience that are podcasters. So this may fall right in their sweet spot, like exactly what they need. So before I let you like wrap up here, I need to find out how they can work with you. So how do people get in contact with you, work with you, support what you're doing, all that great stuff?
Absolutely. And I'll make it easy. First thing you can be able to do, social media is going to be Alundas_Havens. And then I have two podcasts, The Winner's Paradigm, easiest way to find me. If not, Alpha Influence Media. But if you go to The Winner's Paradigm, I'm going to link you back to Alpha Influence Media anyway.
Okay.
So it goes both ways.
Oh, yay. You know what, Alundis, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and for, sharing your story with us because that's super powerful. And I always want people to know that no matter where you come from, that does not matter because it doesn't matter about where you're going. You make the decision about where you're going, right? So thank you for sharing your life and your story and your business with us. I truly appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. I honor you. And it was an immense pleasure to be able to
Thank
be
you.
here and speak today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel the same about you, dude. Thanks. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in Alundis today. Isn't he cool? I knew you guys would like him. So make sure that you guys follow him and go ahead and work with him, especially if you're a podcaster and you need to be, getting up on your game because I don't want you guys to fade out. There's a lot of things that do happen. Podcasters get a little bit overwhelmed in the beginning because we feel like, we don't have the support. Well, Alundis is telling you that he can support you in these areas. So make sure that you guys reach out for him and see if you can work with him and see what else he can do because the man just does everything. Did you hear him? He just does everything. He's gonna manage you really, really well. So thank you guys for being here. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk No Sugar Added. I will link all of his information below. Until next time.